everybody. Welcome back to the Orchestra podcast. We are here today in one of my favorite concert halls you can see behind me. And this is the Rialto Theater where me and Dr. Timothy Angel played a number of concerts together. I imagine they don't sound quite as good as we thought they did at the time, but we made some pretty awesome music together. And he is here today to talk to us about how to structure our practice and maybe some other tips. So Dr. Angel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Nathan, and everybody listening. I'm really happy to be here in the Rialto Theater. It's been a while. But let's see. So how did I get into music? Like my path in music, the Rialto had some kind of structuring there. Being in the Tacoma Youth Symphony, I knew that I loved music and I loved how passionate our conductor was, Dr. Cobbs. And I really enjoyed like going to rehearsal every week. And then I found out there was college programs when I learned about college, even before they really taught you about college. I feel like they teach you about college a lot more now in schools than they ever have. Mm-hmm. Maybe within the last like 3 years, college is like something that is really, really pressed onto kids. Maybe it's been longer, but I feel like since I came from high school, college wasn't talked about as much. And I just thought, music is what I like to do. Why wouldn't I do that? And so actually, I just thought I like to practice. I like to accomplish things. So I think, why not? Why don't I make that a career?
Well, and you've already said something that is so important and is something that my mentor, Sven Ronning, pretty much hammered into my head with a hammer and chisel, is that you have to love to practice if you want to make music a career. And that doesn't mean, performance per se. That could be composition or conducting or teaching or some other professional field of music. You have to love the work.
Yes, and so that's actually part of my journey, because I loved to practice all the time, but part of my journey is that it got structured as I went through grad school. Mm-hmm. So my first 4 years in undergrad, to me, I had really caring mentorship from Dr. Bill Baldwin at Whitworth University in Eastern Washington. What a great guy and what a great mentor. But then I went to a summer camp during my grad school. Dr. Baldwin had connections in Texas, and that's where I ended up for grad school on his recommendation.
Did you do Round Top?
I never did Round Top. I did Brevard, Meadowmount, and
Brevard is, so many people are sleeping on Brevard, but compared to, I did Round Top once, and I have lots of friends who did Interlochen, but from what I know about Brevard is there's like way more going on. It's like more holistic and like more life-changing experiences.
It really, it kind of lets you do what you want to do. You have a little more freedom at Brevard. You get like rotated around orchestras and stuff too. Mm-hmm. And you can pick an opera route, and you can pick other routes too.
Way more options.
Whereas I haven't done Round Top, but I think it's all student orchestras. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Brevard, you're working with like faculty that are teaching at school.
Well, and Round Top is just like almost like the things that you hear about like Soviet ballet schools. It's like the orchestra version of that. And you will come out, if you go like a rough piece of rock, and you'll come out as shimmering quartz, but it is hard, and it's not, and your time is, there's not a lot of free time. Yeah. I had fun just because I like that kind of thing, and maybe I enjoy punishment to some degree, but the options available at Brevard and also Interlochen has, options, but especially Brevard, like I had a close friend who was Bruce Kirkpatrick. Do you ever meet him?
I feel like I know the name. I don't
really
think I've met
good
him.
violinist. He went to Brevard for violin, and he played trumpet in school. They needed another trumpet for the musical.
Oh, wow.
And that experience alone, he has now switched to being a trumpet player
Very cool.
because of the options they had at Brevard.
That's awesome. So let's see. Basically, I loved the experience of music camp. I never really knew how an income would happen. I just knew like you just go practice, you learn about all these things, you make connections, and everything kind of works itself out. I didn't know a ton of structure about financial. So I went to, I went to my master's in 2015, and then I basically, I started my first year, and during that year I heard about Bravo's, it's a program Sally O'Reilly runs in Minnesota, and she's a phenomenal teacher, and she changed my life in everything. It was the first time my practice became all structured. It became totally structured. Everything changed, and then I realized I love to practice even more than I've ever loved to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're following some of the videos I've posted on Instagram and Facebook. All of those have a structure that is built on me teaching myself. And from studying with her for just a short month, just getting lessons with her, she gave me all the keys to basically start teaching myself pieces without guidance other than what I had in front of me.
And that's why video is so important, as painful as it can be, is that, like you said, is you are your own teacher. Because as soon as you go back to that video, you see everything and in the stark light of day.
Yep. So during that camp, I was introduced to Otar
Sevchik, yes.
And I was introduced to Shradik, Sevchik, and like 4 versions of Sevchik.
That is my breakfast every day is Shradik, Sevchik, and then maybe a little bit of Mazis or Kreutzer just to feel like I accomplished something.
So basically the foundations of Sevchik Opus 8 shifting is it's basically my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because every single part of that book goes with me as I learn every part of a concerto, because the way it structures you to learn shifting, you know where you're going all the time, but it's not even a practice these exercises and then you'll have everything figured out. No, you practice these exercises and everything that you do from then on uses those exercises. So it goes from, there's exercises from first to second position.
Well, and I was just looking it up on the internet here to confirm, but when I learned the Brahms, there's actually like a practice companion that Sevchik made. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I have used that too. Like actually, probably every section that I'm going over, I always look at those. I don't use the fingerings that he uses a lot, but
I am so compelled by the fingerings in older editions, and I want to know, were they really doing them, or Sven Ronning was telling me the story about when the Galamian Quartet was doing the editing for, I think it was all of the Beethoven quartets. They gave them, each of the 4 players, the parts individually, and they bowed and fingered them separately.
Oh.
So when they produced and sold the Beethoven quartets, none of them matched.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I think sometimes that's what's happening.
Yeah, I don't know. The fingerings are okay. A lot of them work, and there's even 1 or 2 that I have used so far, but it's more of gathering data and figuring out what I want to use. I'll watch a lot of videos to get fingerings. I'll watch a lot of, just to understand how timing works. So I guess the biggest thing that Sevchik taught me is you always use a metronome in everything you do, and you always learn your shifting in time. It's never a jerky shift.
And can you talk to us about the relationship between, and this is something I've heard from a number of great teachers, of the speed of your shift with left hand and the speed of right hand are connected in a really weird way that we don't ever think about.
We don't think about it, but honestly, my shifts, my bow never stops moving anymore.
Uh-huh.
So I always decide what I'm shifting on, the old bow or the new bow, and my
Yeah.
shifts always happen during that. So I can, when I'm practicing slow, that's how it works, because when I practice slow, I release the shift, which is a huge key that nobody ever showed me. So
Uh-huh.
releasing, and then once you get there and pressing, you have to have a little sound that is a whisper that shows you you're there. And that's kind of
Mhm.
how I learned that. And after about a month of like 3 hours a day of subject shifting, I
Mhm.
figured it out, and I learned the Glazunov violin concerto in 3 months. And
Wow.
I won a competition
It's
solo
so
with it.
hard.
It is tough. And I mean, I had all the practice ethic. I had all
Mhm.
the work ethic. I had the drive to do it. It was just that sequence of just how you do it and how you work it up.
Mhm.
And then I started learning all these show pieces on my own, and I
Uh-huh.
realized, man, I can do this stuff on my own.
Yep.
And my teachers, they give me so much guidance. Uh, Dr. Baldwin's so wonderful guy, just that's such a great character and person that, like, I really wanted like a role model for my life. And
Mhm.
then I studied with Martha Wahlberg at UTA, UT Arlington for my master's,
Mhm.
and just a great, just a great person. So then after I studied with Sally O'Reilly for a month,
Mhm.
I she told me about her student, John Gilbert at Texas Tech,
Oh yeah.
and that's where I went and did my doctorate with him. And so we did a lot more subject, we did a lot more everything, and on top of that, I got to do like 4 doctoral recitals,
Yeah.
and then after I finished that, uh, yeah, I that was where I was like, man, I got to start figuring out what I'm doing. So before I started my doctorate, I I took Suzuki training for book one,
Great.
and so I did that about 7 days before my wedding, and then I did it 7 days. It was all 2 weeks before I moved to Lubbock. So I did book one,
Mhm.
and since then I've done book 1 through 7, and I'm finishing 8, 9, and 10 this summer.
Mhm.
But I mean, presuming all the Suzuki camps are open,
Yeah.
that we'll see. But let's see. So basically, the Suzuki stuff, I kind of realized there's not a ton of in between Suzuki book 9 and 10 and going to an artist level. There's not a ton of that. A lot of teachers,
Well,
uh,
and uh, Janice Upshaw, who you might remember, is a teacher, a Suzuki teacher in Tacoma.
yeah.
I was having a conversation with her about how Shinichi Suzuki was really just building up to Bach double. So books 1 through 3 is like every piece is like the next step you need to get to Bach double. And then after that, it's just really, really good learning repertoire, but it's not
Mhm.
quite structured in the same progressive way that
Yeah.
1 through 3 is. So that's kind of like the one fault, but it's still all fantastic repertoire for any student
Yeah.
to pick up and learn.
It's I really love teaching that method, because actually the big part of Suzuki that I love is a community you develop between
Yes.
parents and
Mhm.
students. And for me, Suzuki became more of like a way of like building children up rather than
Yes.
thinking about who's going to be a prodigy and who do I focus on here.
Uh-huh.
Um, because let's face it, uh, part of your income, you're going to have students that are maybe just there because their parents want them there.
Uh-huh.
But then you're going to have a lot of students that aren't. I mean, I guess you could probably say in your school programs, there's not a ton of kids that are going to do music as a major out of
Well, and
school.
I come to work every day and I know that what I'm doing is primarily is I'm giving students an identity, that
Yeah.
they are an orchestra kid and that's like where they belong, and that gives them like a sense of security in who they are. And
Yes.
then it's teaching them the most important skills in life, which are showing up on time and staying organized and being dedicated to your craft, whatever it is.
Yes.
And
And
if
so,
that continues to be music, great.
and for me, I always work on the same things: tone production and just be communication, being
Mhm.
able to like, so I show up to every lesson. A kid shows up to every lesson. They come to my house. I don't show up to them, but
Uh,
they show up to every lesson. And that's how I look at it. Every kid's going to get the same product. How they use that product is up to them, and how their parents structure their time at home. But their parents know that the way I teach, they don't want to stop coming. And the way that I walk their kids through, whether or not they're 9, 3 years old, or uh, in college. Right now, I have about 40 little kids and 17 college students.
mhm.
I started this semester. I started a free program for 3-year-olds,
Uh,
and
and do
it's
the
once
parents learn with the 3-year-olds?
they
True
don't
Suzuki method?
they can they can choose to do it. They just have to be there, and they have to start walking through stuff with the kids. They have to learn it on their own so they can practice at home. And
Yeah.
the program's completely free for them for a semester. I don't
Just for one.
charge, just for one semester. And I don't charge because the first thing is, if a parent has a bad day and misses a lesson, I don't have to worry about that charge because they don't get
Uh-huh.
charged. Well, if they have a bad
Well,
day,
and
I don't.
when you're starting, getting a ding like that, it can be really discouraging for continuing.
Yes, but I also see dedication, so it's almost an interview with the parents as well.
Mhm.
So seeing that semester go by, this semester I started with 6. There's a good chance I'll end with 3 in the program
Uh-huh.
next year, but that will be paid patrons at that point.
Yeah.
So um, I those kids will be 4, and their first priority in life was violin lessons, not soccer. So I look at it as somewhat of a
Uh-huh.
success
Yeah, you're
there.
building it from the ground up.
And when you do that, you get parents to do what you want, rather than when they come in at 7, they tell you, I have gymnastics, soccer, everything, and we got to fit
Okay.
this around that. So my goal is to kind of,
To make violin the priority from the start.
that's
So
one of my
there's no
goals with
competition.
it. Yeah. And I love, and I mean, I even tell the parents that it's not like I'm telling you this secret of mine. I even let them know this is why I'm doing it for free, because I want you to see what product I provide and what your kids are capable of.
Mhm.
So anyways, even if I got 2 kids out of it, it
Mhm.
was a good experiment, and I decided I'm going to call it the Rising Stars program, and I'm going to
Uh-huh.
continue it for 4 kids a semester. So basically, after my doctorate, I came back to UTA and did a recital, just to do a recital, to run my last doctoral recital.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't tell me, but they needed another professor, an adjunct that was just part-time.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't tell me, but I was actually auditioning for that position because people were ending their contracts there that year.
Okay.
And they didn't really tell me any of this until maybe the last month of my doctorate. They called me and let me know that my concerts were compelling and that I wouldn't get a ton of students, but if I came there, they would love to work with me. I don't even know if it was actually an audition or if it just came up that, hey, this guy is here, he would be great. So anyways, I've loved the environment at UTA. I've loved what I'm doing. um, I ended up taking a full studio last semester. I had 20 students,
That's
four,
tremendous.
4 of them on viola, and
Wow.
I'm in my second year of teaching there. I love it. I love working with faculty. And anyways, so let's talk about the practice thing.
Yes. And I
Okay.
have something that I want to show you because this is what my kids see. And we can talk through how to use, and you've probably seen this before. This is the daily practice organizer from Burton Kaplan's Practicing for Artistic Success.
Okay.
So I'm going to show screen share my desktop share. Okay, can you see what I'm
Oh,
looking at?
cool. Yep.
Okay, So this is what we got. I I don't worry about this so much up here for just public school students, but we have order of practice, amount of time planned, and then practicing strategies. So
Cool.
if Dr. Angel was filling this out, what would my order of practice be?
so so lately, I would say what I try and do is I try and think of that Opus 8 subject as a good starting block for what I start in the day.
Hmm.
And maybe even right now with all this online teaching, I might get 3 hours of practice in right now,
Uh-huh.
maybe.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like just so busy. You think you have a ton of free time, and then you're like, yeah, but I really still teach. So it doesn't just change. So, anyways, let's see. Maybe a year and a half ago, I got to do Prokofiev Concerto with a community orchestra here in
One or
Dallas.
two.
Number one.
Okay.
And so I got to play it with them once here in Dallas and then once in Tulsa the next week. And just, it was the first concerto I learned without a teacher in
Hmm.
my like just going to lessons every week. I
Uh-huh.
learned it all on my own and had to like develop everything on my own. So
Hmm.
basically, my regimen was in the morning. I work out every day. I start running at 5:30, and so when I started running at 5:30, my first movement to listen to was the second movement of the concerto.
And
And
I hate to interrupt, but that is that listening to music counts as practice for me.
oh yeah,
And
I
and
mean
and
it
people, I think, dismiss what counts as practice. I mean, it's not the same as time with the instrument, but it's a
exactly.
really, really important part of a practice regimen.
It is, and a big part of it that's important is just understanding that the ensemble connections and
Mm,
understanding that you're gaining from listening is so much more important than even learning the music. Because if you can learn every note on the page, but if you don't know how it fits with the orchestra, it's going to be tough the first time you get in there and start rehearsing it. So just having it seeping through your pores is kind of the analogy I kind of think of. You just need to know every single aspect of every single turn that music brings to you.
and
um
that was something that I learned because I stayed an extra year at PLU to get my choral certificate,
okay,
and singing
cool.
with the Choir of the West, which is one of the top university choirs globally. Um, we had to memorize everything, and that's not something that we do in symphony orchestras. It's something we have to do as soloists a lot, but not something we do like in a group orchestra. uh,
Yeah,
but if I listened to the music and if I was really really focused in rehearsal, I didn't have to try to memorize the music. It would just
hmm.
happen because of my focus and the repetition of practice.
Yeah, so I would say order of practice for me is a few scales,
Okay.
probably my warm-up exercise, a few scales. Just to be brutally honest, I don't always do scales. But I also have to teach them a lot in my undergraduate and even in my
I
master's
think
some.
you're probably playing enough throughout the day. I think I can give you a pass.
Yes, so I'm playing a lot of scales every day. I play somewhat of 48 scales every day during the regular week. I Our barriers here at UT are very structured in that everybody has to know all the scales. So I'm listening to a lot of scales every day.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, if I'm not playing them. So basically I warm up a little bit. I find the passage that I want to play in the Brahms.
So
I
now,
find,
if we looking back on the practice organizer, so
yep,
you've done your warm up here, which is maybe some Sevchik, maybe some scales.
yep.
Are we doing any
Something,
Stradiak?
uh, yeah, I did. I went through the book, so I haven't brought it out too much. If I feel like there's a tongue twister that I need to figure out in some
Uh-huh.
other movement, I treat it like I was learning a Stradiak.
Oh, okay.
I look at those books as like foundations to how I
Uh-huh.
learn everything else now. It's not that I have to go back to the book to have warm up. I look at the music and say, what can I apply from Kreutzer 4 into
Yeah.
Introduction and Rondo
Okay.
Rondo
Okay.
Capriccioso? How
Yes.
can I make these hard leaps and make it happen so I can do this under pressure at any time.
Okay, so we've got our warm up, and then we've got
Yep.
like your first priority is Brahms. Now, would you break that up and just say Brahms, or would you say first movement, second movement, third movement, or like letter A to letter D? Or
So my biggest advice for everybody is like, once you get out of probably undergraduate, you work on one movement at a time. It seemed that's how my undergraduate experience was. After I got out of the undergrad experience, I started working on full concertos right away, because as you learn those concertos, there's parts in there that you need to let, what I call, marinate. And if you've ever marinated a steak, you have to leave it in the fridge for 24 hours before you bring it out, or it has a certain amount of time. So to me, the first thing you need to do is learn this concerto and get it under your fingers at a slow tempo in time.
And this is something that I've experienced playing in and conducting community orchestras. And very paradoxically, because you make the assumption that not everybody is practicing, the best way to improve all of the repertoire for a whole concert is to have as much time as possible with all of the repertoire, so that, like you say, those hard bits can marinate. And then as you know that you've put the steak in the plastic bag with the soy sauce and the garlic, then maybe you can start, mincing some onions over here, but you've touched on everything at least once.
Actually, I love this analogy of, there's like kind of 3 stages to a mastery. So for little kids, when I'm teaching them their steps to put up the violin, there's just a first stage, which is learning all 5 steps of putting up the violin. The second stage is getting really, 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 really fast at it. And the third stage is called artistic. And you go from 5 steps to 1 step. And it turns into 1 step into putting your violin. So I look at the Brahms as having those 3 stages in the whole concerto. You have 1 step. You're just learning the basics of shifting, getting around it at a slow speed. And then you start repeating and repeating and repeating. And then at the end, you put it together at close to full speed. I would say a lot of my Brahms right now is in the second step. It's a lot of it is, it's learned, but now I'm putting those steps and just going to them and repeating and repeating and repeating. And a big tip that I have for everybody is to memorize as you go. There's too many people that keep their eyes attached to the music. And to me, the problem with that is you never look over at your technique. And that was a big part of what my videos are doing for me, is I want to show people that I'm looking at my technique and maybe what's going through my head, but I also want it to be presentable to a sense. It's not always going to be perfect, but I want it to be presentable to a sense where I can stand behind my work and say, I did the work generally really well here, and it's not up to speed yet, but I want you to see that I'm going to put this in the fridge and let it marinate. And then when I come back to it, maybe the next day when I just go over it slow, that's another chance to let it sink in.
Something that was a big game changer for me, and I hope maybe you'll remember, is that at some point, it was probably your junior or senior year in high school, Tacoma Youth Symphony started suggesting that we go out and get the international
scores?
Orchestral excerpts book.
Oh, yeah.
And they started doing that. It was like 2007, 2008. And that was just like oh my gosh, like the hardest bits from all of the music are there.
Yeah.
And then when I was leaving college, I was still kind of enamored with the idea of being more efficient with my time by just practicing the hard bits. But also, I'm out of college, I don't have a teacher anymore, and I'm taking auditions. So I found online, there's this guy, Michael O'Giblin, I think is how you pronounce his name. and he has a running list of all of the orchestral excerpts being asked for by every American orchestra, and he'll sell you the book.
Oh, cool.
Because the international edition it's the edition that they are. They're not adding new material at any point.
So I should let you know, like, a big step for me in everything that I'm doing is I'm gonna play what I'm working on, and
Yep.
I'm gonna do a performance of it, even if it's just with piano.
Yep.
So one of the things that we got to COVID, and I was actually in Eastern Washington, and I did 2 recitals there. I did one at Washington State University and then one at my old undergrad, and I got to run master classes at both. And I ran the last master class on Thursday, the 12th
The
of
day
March.
before they shut it down. Yep.
They shut everything down on the 13th, the day I left and went home. And I was so glad that I got to do that experience, because I got to do 2 different programs in 3 days. And it was maybe one of the hardest things I've ever done in terms of accomplishing, but just having 2 repertoire under my fingers, like hour-long programs, and just being able to go from one piece to the other and just have a calm, like, fake it till you make it attitude, and just act like I have it all together and just get through those experiences. It built me and made me very strong. But then right after everything shut down, I was on my way home and I was just like, what am I gonna do? Everything shuts down. I'm like toast. I'm losing gigs. I'm losing, I hope I don't lose students. And thankfully, I've only lost the students I don't want to teach. And that might be 3. And that's a blessing in itself. Everybody else is okay
So
with
you're
online
doing things
lessons.
online, I imagine.
Oh, 30 hours of it a
Yep.
week.
Uh-huh.
So then the next thing, thing is I was on the plane and I said, if I'm gonna have all this free time, I need a project to do. And
Brahms is an okay project.
I've always wanted to learn Brahms, and so I decided I wanted to be done within the few months. I want to learn the basic, maybe be at end of step 2 and start being on step 3 of what my step process is of the Brahms. I want to be on step 3 towards the end of this COVID thing. And actually it's been wonderful just figuring out every trick for every measure of the piece. And so wood shedding everything.
If we could just back up for where I was going with the orchestral excerpts is once I got the big, it's like 300 pages, the thing that Michael Gibson sells. But that's where I learned memory, is because when you get the list of 5 excerpts for your audition, you're spending so much time with such small chunks of music that you really don't need the 300-page spiral-bound book to carry around everywhere with you, because you've got it in your head because you were so obsessed with practicing and perfecting. And if you just expand and apply that to whatever piece we're working on, like you say, and a great piece of advice that I've heard from a million different people is that whatever piece you're working on at the time has to be your favorite piece of music. And in that way, the memory builds itself. And then you don't need to take the music with you necessarily. If you've just got your violin and you're in a practice room waiting for your next student, but your Brahms score is at home, I'm sure you can still woodshed, 12 different things from memory and get a lot of work done.
Yeah. So I guess I could say on the lines of that, like being able to structure the music where if you look at professional repertoire, I don't know, they came out with a list of, I heard Brian Lewis, I don't know if this is like 100% true, but I heard somebody called him and said, well, we need you to fill in for this orchestra performance because
I heard this story.
Yeah. And so he said, well, which concerto? Because I need this amount of time for this one, this amount of time for that one. And it was like,
that's on his website. You can look it up.
Oh, so 3 days for Brooke, 2 weeks for Shasta, something like that. And so it's also keeping those, I call them magic tricks to my kids, keeping those magic tricks under your fingers so you can come back to it and learn it and play it again. So let's see.
Yeah, so if you could just demonstrate like maybe just one or two passages and how you attack it, that would be great.
Okay, so maybe just the opening few measures. Opening few measures. Do you have any passages you'd want me to, in Brahms, how about you pick a passage?
Well, I'm a big fan of after it's right where the rolling chords start and you're moving your hand in position in kind of a diminished form, but keeping the bow moving and trying to think of which finger is the anchor finger, because once you get down into first position, the anchor disappears.
Okay, this in the first movement?
Yeah, in the first movement. But maybe would be even better is in the third movement. There's all of those tuplet passages that are just so fast. The da-da-da-da-da. You know what I'm talking about?
Was it one of the videos I've done recently?
No, I'm just thinking off of my memory in the third movement.
So are they arpeggios?
Yes.
There's two of them. I can just, oh man, you're putting me on the spot. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So just first off, you have to be able to get this in time. So I would probably start at 60 to the 8th note. And if I were to, I literally will bring out a metronome here.
Oh, you have to, absolutely.
And if I were to just it's not always, the bowing needs to be worked out, of course, but
I can see the Sevchik happening, that you're being very efficient with your fingering. Maybe not doing the Sevchik fingering, but with something that is so rapid and acrobatic. Your hand has to be in a more efficient position. So, I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, so the trick here is when I go up in speed, I go up 5 increment. So I go from 60 to 65. And guess what? Surprisingly, and then I go 5 up the next one.
Keep doing that and doing that and doing that.
Now, I go all the way to 120, and then I switch it to 60 again and start up again. Okay. And I switch it double speed basically at that point. So it goes from da-da, it'll be on 60
so you're doubling and then increasing by 5 and then doubling and increasing by 5.
Yep, so then not perfect, but that's where I am after I go through it the whole time.
Now, like, you're gonna love me, but I thought of the one spot that I actually did really, really, really want to hear, and it's in the first movement, and it's right at the end of the. It's the weird D minor descending scale where you start way up high, and it's the tuplets with a harmonic minor descending scale.
In the first movement. Oh.
Yeah. So, just how do we think about fingering it?
So,
and that one.
So right there, the first thing you need to know is leaps of faith are for church, not the fingerboard.
Yep.
And so I want my 2 to be the ending fingering, because once you go up here, you can find this this E, and it gives you gives you a minor. There's a place, a minor 7th, I believe. Yep. So it gives you a minor 7th, but all you have to do is get to that harmonic. So for fingering that, I actually really like the fingering that was written there. I believe I do. So how do you figure out a fingering like that? Is that what your question is?
Yeah, like how do you decide? Because the Sven's rule with me was always the fingering that is the most in tune the first time you try it. But that rule doesn't always work, because sometimes, like you're saying, you need to decide on a fingering that actually has some scaffolding for the rest of the phrase.
It does, but I like that rule because honestly, I've had really hard times and like nervous fingerings in the Tchaikovsky concerto. I had a few nerve-wracking fingerings, and then people were
you
like,
just gotta trust yourself.
Well, then people were like, "Have you tried this one?" And I was like, "No," because I was always told to do this one, but then the other one worked so well, I changed it in a heartbeat. And it was like, that was the one that worked the best the first time I tried it. I like that rule. But
let me turn on the screen share here just one more time so people can see the scale we're talking about. It's right here.
Yeah.
And this isn't so bad because that's just a diminished scale, and there's like a, the diminished fingering, no matter what key you're in. But some of this stuff is really hard to decide what's going to be safe in a performance.
It's if you work on it, if you go over it, the cool thing is the third beat, you're in third position and you're going to be fine. So you have 2 notes there that can be harmonics at that point. So if you have this high D, you have a B harmonic. And I actually like 3/3 and then 2/1 harmonic. And so you can kind of build your fingering around the structure of how the violin is made for you to play.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of shifting or sliding on half steps when you have that choice, just to give yourself that scaffolding. So that doesn't always work, but I can see you doing a lot of that here.
Yep. I mean, well, in my practice, I do that for sure. Like, because that's how you learn it. For instance, if you go down to 3/12, it's actually just that whole section is just, it's just kind of an agility of getting around.
And maintaining the frame of the hand, because it's the same thing you've just done.
Yep. Yeah, and then getting down.
And I can tell that you're not, when I was, I mean, both you and I, when we were in U Symphony, we were big fans of playing. We did a lot of playing, but not always the kind of structured practicing that we should have been. I mean, you practiced way more than I did, that's for sure. But
I was not structured all the time. No.
but like we just played, and somebody who's just playing would maybe be just jumping up and down in those sections, and somebody with a more enlightened approach in that particular passage at 312, you're going over as much as you can rather than
Yeah.
that. So
Yep.
as much more as we could discuss practicing and the Brahms Violin Concerto, I think we are just about out of time here. But
Great.
there is one question that I ask all of my guests, and I think I forgot to ask my last guest, and now I feel really, really bad. But if you could go back in time and talk to maybe, let's say 7 or 8-year-old Tim, and give yourself some kind of advice that would help you overcome a challenge that you've had in life, it's specific to music, your career path, what might you tell your younger self to help weather that struggle better?
Calm down and breathe. Trust the way you were raised, and work really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, a big part of my life now is faith, and having a faith in God, and like just trusting that I'm in the right place, and where I am is in the right place at the right time. Like if I didn't trust that, I wouldn't be doing music.
Yeah,
I love it, but like as we are seeing, this COVID stuff is like cutting a lot of music business for a lot of us, and a big part of this Brahms project is for me to like focus on something other than the financial woes of this.
Yeah.
And like see, like it's so great to work on all this major repertoire. We all want time to do it. I try and do one recital a year, and this year, surprisingly, I did 3, and 2 of them were different rep. And it was like, I practice at 7 a.m. So every morning I have this regimen of just getting to the practice room and starting my scales, maybe 1 or 2, and then getting to the rep because it's time to get it under my fingers.
I love it every day. I've been coming into work because I've been allowed to, and because it keeps me on a routine, because I know
a routine.
The biggest combatant to like depressive patterns is to like keep yourself to a routine. There's, I think, is it Jocko Willink? He says, make your bed. Like if nothing else, make your bed, because you've done one thing today. So I make my bed and I get to work and I look at my phone and, oh, look at it. Tim Angel has a new Brahms video for me to look at. And I'm going to give you a high praise. That gives me the inspiration to go and get my practicing done. Because like Tim has already done it. Like get your act together, Nathan. Get the violin out, practice your scales, start some Beethoven.
So you're doing Beethoven.
Yeah, it's the one that is the most elusive. I feel like that it's really kind of rarely done, and there isn't a standard cadenza. I mean, I think there's a Kreutzer. No, Chrysler. There's a Chrysler cadenza, and it was not well received when he wrote it. But there's so much going on, and it's really difficult. I mean, it's right up there with Brahms. I mean, the third movement is kind of stupid, but the first and second movements are really compelling to me.
Cool. I love the Beethoven Violin Concerto myself. I don't know when it will be my turn to learn it, but right now I knew that I've seen Brahms 10 times live. I've rehearsed it live. Like not the solo part, but just I've been in so many orchestras, and so at this point I was like, I'm gonna do a piece that I've always wanted to do, and I'm gonna make a plan to perform it. So I think like as long as school's open in the fall, it'll be like one of the first weeks of school starting. I'll do a recital with that and either a Bach sonata or something else on the program. Just
throw these I Ballade on top, just like Max and Vengerov, just for fun.
It's not always just for fun. It's more for I look at everything now. I look at all my performing. The first time you do it is only the first time. And if you don't do it the first time, you can't do it a second.
Yeah.
And so the first time you do it, it's just the learning process. So what I'm looking at my performing now as how can I make my learning process better? Oh, wait, it means I have to go do another recital with this repertoire. I have to get this repertoire out because I don't want the next time I play it to be the first time.
Yeah.
I want it to be the second time.
Yeah.
Like if somebody asks me to play a recital, I'm doing a solo recital that's 45 minutes for an art gallery. Sometime in the summer, it got moved, but the cool thing was I did that solo recital already at Washington State in March in Washington State University. So that gave me my first shot at it, and it was a visiting professor thing. So then now I get to do it again, and it will be my second time playing it, and I already felt comfortable about the music there. So I'm really looking forward to doing it a second time. Now I've had one or two experiences where it wasn't the best first performance. And the only way I got past it is I looked at it and said, it's my first performance. I need to do it again. I'm looking forward to doing it again. So I stopped. That's probably what I tell myself. The first time you put your stuff out there, it's not a big deal. It's the first time you're doing it, and look more towards the big picture of what's next. And so faith is strong, but also the next time you get to play it. So there's your answer. It took me a whole bridge, and I went on a trip around the whole United States to get there. But
well, thanks so much, Tim. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I love keeping in touch on Facebook, and I hope your family's doing well. I love seeing updates about your sister and her piano gigs. That just seems like so much fun.
That's cool.
But bye from all of us here, and thanks for coming on.
Bye, Rialto.
Bye.
I love Rialto.